Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about how to travel blog if you can't travel. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Stephanie Craig. I'm a full-time travel blogger. I also am a travel blog mentor. I help people start specific destination travel sites. And today we're going to talk about how to travel blog if you're not traveling. Alternatively, if you don't even have a blog yet, this would be also, we're going to cover like why you should go ahead and start a travel blog if you're not traveling. So why is it a problem to write a travel blog if you're not traveling? I don't think there is. There was a misconception maybe like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that most people who were travel blogging were literally traveling full time and their travel blog was a day-to-day or week-to-week recap of their life on the road. And so they covered places, but they covered places from a concept of that they were always on the road. And I do have a lot of friends who still really wish they were on the road all the time, and obviously they can't be right now, but where it's like part of their identity. I was a full-time nomad for a while, then I was part-time nomad, part-time based in Sofia after I met my fiance. But this year has made it so that no one can be on the road full-time. People can barely be on the road responsibly at all, and unfortunately, there are some travel bloggers who are acting like the world isn't different and they're just doing whatever they want to do. But for the most part, in most parts of the world, the safe thing to do is to stay home and do work from home. And so the tips I'm going to talk about today are not only things that would be helpful for anyone who is stuck in a situation where they need to be off the road for a little while in the future, but they're also things that I personally have been doing this year to keep my businesses going while I'm stuck at home. The first one is the most obvious, but write about past trips. So a huge mistake that I made when I started travel blogging, I told this whole story in my video on mistake new travel bloggers make, which I'll link to at the top. But I knew I wanted to be a full-time travel blogger for a year, was at home saving money, and I only during that time wrote maybe a dozen or 2 dozen articles about trips that I went on during that time. And obviously those articles are garbage because I didn't know what I was doing, but it was just exercising. It's good to exercise your muscle. And so even if you're not on the road yet, but you plan on being on the road in the future, whether you want to travel and blog full time or you just want to blog about trips that you go on occasionally, is that I could have been writing about so much more. At that point, I wasn't a super travel expert, but I knew enough about a lot of places that I had been in the past many times that I could have been writing guides to those places, even though I didn't have, current photos. So one of the things that really worry people is like, if I write about a trip I took, last year, but I wasn't a travel blogger at that time, I might not have great photos for that. And that actually just happened to me yesterday. I was writing an article about, visiting Atlantic City, but I was on a travel blogger when I was there and some of the specific activities that I wanted to mention. Doesn't make those activities less valid. Obviously, I need to do my research and make sure that those activities are still available. But drinking cocktails at a casino hotel that has been open for a long time and will be open for a long time is a great activity. And I just don't have pictures from that trip. I have a few terrible pictures, but I don't have pictures in the kinds of ways that I get pictures now. So now when I go out on a trip, I document almost everything. I document the bus station and the airport and the bathrooms and the gift shops. I document everything. But I didn't do that at the time. I just had, a couple of good snapshots, and some of those that I thought were good at the time, I wouldn't even consider good today. So something that you can do is write about old trips. And if you're, you can just use less photography in those articles. That's okay. I personally use a lot of photography in my articles, both because it makes them longer and therefore keeps people on the website longer, but also because I personally like websites where different points are illustrated and have a lot of illustration, because it helps me in my head kind of plan what looks good and what doesn't. So if there are websites you can use for stock photography. One of the reasons that I have a paid Canva account instead of just using the free account is because in there's a lot of photos. So yeah, you may not have a specific photo of a meal of a restaurant you ate at that you loved, but you can find general photos of the city, and a lot of the major landmarks. If you want to go and make a big investment, you can get a Shutterstock account, which we have a Shutterstock account for one of our websites. I don't necessarily know if I would do that if I was just starting out. I would start with the paid Canva account because Shutterstock, we invested in Shutterstock it was an investment. It was a serious investment. Whereas Canva is $12.95 a month to have access to you get access to a lot of other features too, but one of the things that's best is all of the photos that come with it. So I'll link in the description below that, as well as the other things I personally use to run my blog. But yeah, I would write about past trips first. That's literally what I'm doing right now. Yesterday, I wrote an article about a trip I took to New Jersey. Now, I've been to Atlantic City several times, and so I wrote kind of a guide that's a composite of multiple trips that I took, plus updated information, just double check that everything that I did in the past looks like it will still be open in the future. And then when 2020 is over, if everything's open, if I kept my recommendations kind of vague, like where we went to. I mentioned our specific hotel that we stayed at, but I didn't mention like specific restaurants, because restaurants unfortunately are less likely to survive this current mess. But if I was just writing about a trip I took like in normal times that I had taken in the past, it wouldn't be a big deal. I would just go ahead and mention the restaurants and the cafes, because that's the kind of stuff people really like to know. So, and something to keep in mind when you're writing about past trips is you can look for keywords that will make it worthwhile. I would not just write like, here's everything I did on my trip to Dallas. I would be like more strategic than that, and I would still, like, those blog posts can still be really good SEO oriented blog posts. And if you don't know, SEO stands for search engine optimization. If you don't know it, it's really not that scary. I told the story in the video 10 mistakes new travel bloggers make, how going to the talk with Jim, one of the owners of Make Traffic Happen, how that like really changed my blogging life. That was 2.5 years after I'd started my blog, and it was 2.5 years ago from today. But actually it was 3 years ago. Time is flying. So it was 2 years after I started my blog, but 3 years ago, like changed my whole outlook and how I wanted to do blogging. So SEO is really important. It's also a great way for you to make your blog profitable, even if you plan on being more of a personality driven blogger. So if you don't know search engine optimization, I'll link in the description to Make Traffic Happen. When I used their handbook. They had like a ebook, but now they have a full video course, which is really priced competitively compared to other SEO courses. So I would start there if you don't know it. But anyway, so first thing I would do if I was stuck at home, what I currently am doing this year is looking back on past trips, going and finding good keywords to write about, and writing about ones that I know where I'm an expert. And why is Atlantic City a good topic for me to write about? I've been there multiple times. I lived in Philadelphia for 10 years and it was right down the shore. But there's also trips that I took on that were shorter, where maybe I had wanted to write an article at the time but didn't get around to it at the time. So maybe I have more photos because I was blogging, but it doesn't really help. The best articles that you can write about past trips are the ones you're most excited to share, and the ones where you feel like you have the most to say and where your opinion will be the most helpful because you really bring a level of expertise to it. So if you have an option between writing about London and you were in London for 3 days 10 years ago versus writing about Columbus, Ohio, but you were in Columbus, Ohio a week every year because your grandmother lives there, I would write about Columbus, Ohio. It's not as like exciting and like it's not as it may not feel like as romantic, but that's okay. Like that's still that would be where I would personally go. The next topic that you can write about if you are stuck at home, either saving money to travel full time, or it's just 2020, or you have a full-time job and you only want to travel blog about places like as you go there, which you shouldn't do that, but whatever. I write about preparing to travel. So there's lots of things that you have to do as travelers to get ready to travel. And each of those topics can be broken up into thousands of articles. So think about it. Money issues, pet issues, home issues, family issues, kid issues, school issues, work issues. There's all kinds of things. And each of those have potential to be, hundreds, thousands of articles. One of the articles on my website that I personally really like, but nobody reads it because it's not done very well with SEO, but it's just like a personal favorite of mine is an interview I did with a friend of mine who is an expert on death awareness and flight anxiety. And she's like, so we were, how do you prepare to fly if you have flight anxiety? How are you saving money to go on your next trip? How do you find cheap flight? Again, a lot of these topics are covered by a lot of really big bloggers. So if you feel like your new blog isn't going to be able to compete with those, find long tail keywords, So instead of, how to save money for travel, maybe how to save $1,000 for travel, or how to save money for spring break. And those are probably still too big, but like maybe like how to plan a cheap spring break trip in New Mexico might be like more open. So and again, for all these topics, I'm just throwing out random ideas. I haven't run any of these through Key Search or any other tools to see if they're good ideas. So I wouldn't go write those immediately. I would get a Key Search account, and which I'll link to in the description, and get a Key Search account and learn SEO, and then use those things. The next topic that you can write about if you are not traveling yet is your hometown. Like I mentioned this too in mistakes new travel bloggers make, but I did this, like we almost never think of our hometown as a travel destination, because so many of us think of our travel blogs as our story, and like travel blogs don't have to be your story, but even your story includes your cool tips in your hometown. If you're a travel expert, I mean, think about it like this. Rick Steves is famous for his travel tips to Europe, right? He sells millions of dollars in tours. I even have like a fan podcast just dedicated to Rick Steves that I run with my co-host, Christopher Mitchell. And we're obsessed with Rick Steves, and we're obsessed with his tips about Europe. But Rick Steves lives in Seattle, and he lives there many more months of the year than he's in Europe. And don't you think if Rick Steves came out with a guidebook to Seattle, I would take his recommendations? He's a travel expert. He writes about specific places, but that's not the only places he knows. And I bet that his travel tips for Seattle would be some of the best travel tips out there. So it's okay. It's not embarrassing to start writing travel articles about your hometown before you leave on the road. In fact, I have so many friends where we're all starting blogs in this year dedicated to places much closer to home. I even have a whole website about Oklahoma now, and I left Oklahoma when I was 18, and I'm so excited to move back. But like, if you told me in 2002 when I moved that like Oklahoma would be one of my favorite places to write about from a travel perspective, like I would have never believed you. But really, I should have 1 million articles on my website about Philadelphia, and they aren't there because I wasn't writing those articles before I left, and that was a huge mistake. So do not make that mistake. Write about where you're from. Now, a couple of caveats, or when people from America read my websites, between $30 and $50 per 1,000 readers. When people in India read my website, I get like $2 per 1,000 readers. So if you're from a place where, ad rates are going to be lower, and you can just Google that and see like where ad rates are lower, then those original articles might not be as easy to monetize, but you can still have hotel recommendations and car rental recommendations and tour recommendations. And you can put those all in now, or just by writing these articles now while you don't know what you're doing yet. In the future, when you do figure out what to do, you can go back and fix them. That's what most of us actually do. It's like the best thing to do is just get started writing and then go back and fix your problems as you go. All right, so here's a bonus topic that I just thought about while we were in this video. It's not even in my notes over here. Another thing that you can be doing, it's not technically travel blogging, but it is, because all the time that I've spent on this stuff is still like travel blogging work, is use this time to learn SEO and learn Pinterest. If you can learn SEO for search engine optimization for search engines, and you can learn Pinterest because Pinterest is a visual search engine, that will help you so much in the long run. If you spent a month or 3 months or a year writing blog posts about your hometown and past trips and how to prepare for future trips, but you did it learning SEO and learning Pinterest, your articles are going to do so much better. And then when you do start traveling again, whether you want to travel full time or you're just waiting to your next big trip, then you'll be fine. Now, another thing you could do is learn affiliate marketing. So yeah, learn SEO, learn Pinterest, learn affiliate marketing. These 3 things will take you so far as a travel blogger. And like some things that people think of as travel blogging as like campaign work. So I had a video, 10 ways that travel bloggers make money, and I outlined 10 different strategies. And that's not even all the ways, but it's a lot of the ways. And a lot of times people think of like campaign work as really important. Well, how do you build campaign and a personal following if you're not on the road and you don't have like a great backlog of really good Instagram worthy pictures and stuff? Well, That's harder. But what's not hard right now is learning SEO and learning Pinterest and learning affiliate marketing and setting your websites up for success for all of those things. And now, one last point before we go. When you do start traveling, if you're not going to be traveling full time, if let's say you go on a week-long trip, don't come home and write one post about it. That was another mistake that I made. Come home and write 10 posts about it. Come home and write 20 posts about it. And if you can learn SEO and learn Pinterest and write 20 posts about a week-long trip, and you take 4 week-long trips a year, that's like a year's worth of content. When I started blogging, I would do like huge trips with 1 or maybe even 0 blog posts about the whole trip, because like, I don't know, I just didn't, I made so many mistakes, but it's fine. But now like I go on a week-long trip and I have 30 articles that I know I want to write about. So it's not like you go on a trip, show some Instagram photos, and then you're like done. Like come home and do the work of writing about every step of the trip. And 4 weeks on the road a year can last a year. If you could do 3 months on the road a year, that's way more than you could write about in a year. Anything beyond that, and you're really just on the road to be on the road, which is fine, like that's fun. But if you're just looking for from like a content perspective, 3 months of hardcore traveling cannot be written about by one human in 9 months. Like, no, there's just too many potential topics. So if you are running out of topics from that much travel, it's because you're not thinking like big enough about like what the topic should be. And if you're on the road more than that, you're gonna at some point realize like you're just piling up articles that you want to write that you're not gonna write. And then you can either save those for the next time that you're stuck at home, or you can just realize, like I have realized, that at some point you have a list of 2,000, 3,000 articles that you really should have written that are never going to get written, but that's okay. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. It really does help me out. And subscribe for 2 new videos every week on travel blogging tips and tricks, how-tos, and travel blog monetization. Thanks for watching.